Nesso's derisive laughter echoed through the Grand Galactic Council chamber as he pointed mockingly at the holographic display of the simple, primitive human ships. The arrogant Zanari leader continued his tirade against the newly encountered humans. These apes dare to enter the galactic stage with such pathetic excuses for starships. More laughter erupted from the assembled alien counselors. I could obliterate their entire fleet with a single Zanari cruiser. Robert Adams, the stone-faced human ambassador, sat rigidly in his seat, knuckles white as he gripped the armrests, barely restraining his anger at the council's blatant condescension. These pompous aliens had no idea what humanity was truly capable of. The deceptively basic human ship designs masked the revolutionary potential of their experimental spatial distortion drives. The counselors continued mocking the humans, with the Krillid delegate Zorax chiming in. Perhaps we should send them some outdated freighters as charity. The chamber filled with sycophantic chuckles. Neso smirked, waving his clawed hand dismissively. The primitives are hardly worth discussing further. Let us move on to matters of actual importance. The council readily agreed, returning to their agenda and galactic politics. Suddenly, urgent alarms blared. The Ashraki counselor Valtis shouted in disbelief. Impossible! A massive Voitax war fleet just jumped into council space. They're invading a dozen worlds simultaneously. Panic gripped the chamber as the situation reports flooded in. The counselors scrambled to coordinate a defense against the unexpected Voitax onslaught. However, their command crews soon discovered a horrifying truth. The Voitax ships were equipped with a sinister device that completely disabled the propulsion of most council vessels, leaving them sitting ducks. The advanced alien warships were rendered useless against the marauding Voitax. As the council descended into chaotic shouting and arguing, Robert quietly tapped a hidden implant, opening an encrypted channel to Earth. He relayed the dire circumstances, knowing that this could be humanity's chance to show the galaxy what they were made of. Unbeknownst to the frantic counselors, human ships remained completely unaffected by the Voitax disabling fields, thanks to their unique spatial distortion drives. Without hesitation, Earth's leadership dispatched a battle group of humanity's most advanced vessels to aid the beleaguered council worlds. The Galactic Council tracked the human fleet's approach anxiously, dreading that their last hope against the Voitax were the ships they had just thoroughly scorned and underestimated. Key council worlds teetered on the brink of collapse, their defensive fleets decimated. Suddenly, the sensors registered the human ships decelerating from FTL on the outskirts of the raging battle. The counselors stared at the displays, wondering if the primitives would flee in the face of the Voitax juggernaut. Then, to the utter shock of Neso and the others, the human warships plunged aggressively into the fray, their exotic propulsion systems allowing them to run circles around the enemy vessels, unleashing devastating attacks. The tide of battle shifted dramatically under the ferocity of the human assault. Just as the Voitax lines crumbled, their ships fleeing in disarray, the Council's sensors reported a baffling development. The human fleet had vanished. The counselors gaped at the empty displays, stupefied. Had the humans been destroyed? Had they simply abandoned the fight? A heavy silence fell over the chamber as they realized the galaxy had been plunged into an unprecedented crisis, with humanity's fate now a terrifying unknown. In the aftermath of the human fleet's sudden disappearance, the Galactic Council chambers erupted into a maelstrom of shouted questions and accusations. Neso pounded his fist on the console, his face contorted with a mixture of rage and confusion. Where are the humans? What trickery is this? The other counselors chimed in, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of speculation and fear. Some claimed the humans must have been obliterated by the Voitax, while others whispered that they had turned tail and fled, leaving the council races to their fate. Amidst the chaos, Robert Adams sat stoically, his expression unreadable. Neso rounded on him, pointing an accusing claw. You, human, explain yourself. Where are your ships? Adams met Neso's gaze unflinchingly. Counselor, I assure you that all will be revealed in due time. Have patience. Neso snarled, his patience wearing thin. Patience? The Voitax are rampaging through our space, and you expect us to sit idly by while your ships have vanished into the void? Unbeknownst to the bickering counselors, the human fleet had not been destroyed or fled, but had instead activated an experimental cloaking technology derived from their spatial distortion drives. Admiral John Garrett stood on the bridge of his flagship, the sleek and deadly Artemis, watching the Voitax ships on the screen with a predatory gaze. "Status report," he barked, his eyes never leaving the enemy fleet. "All ships cloaked and in formation, Admiral," his first officer replied crisply. "The Voitax have no idea we're here." Garrett allowed himself a tight smile. "Good. Let's keep it that way. We'll follow them back to their base and strike when they least expect it." Under the cover of their cloaks, the human ships shadowed the retreating Voitax, their advanced sensors tracking every move. As the enemy fleet approached their primary forward operating base, Garrett's eyes glinted with anticipation. He opened a secure channel to Robert Adams. "Ambassador, we have the Voitax base in our sights. Keep the Council distracted. We'll handle things from here." Adams nodded, his holographic image flickering. "Understood, Admiral. Give them hell." As the channel closed, Garrett turned to his crew. "Prepare for combat. We'll hit them fast and hard. They won't know what hit them." The human ships, still cloaked, glided into position around the Voitax base like silent predators. On Garrett's command, they decloaked and unleashed a devastating barrage of advanced weaponry. The Voitax defenses, caught completely off guard, crumbled under the onslaught. Explosions blossomed across the base's surface as the human weapons, derived from the same spatial distortion technology as their drives, tore through shields and armor without effort. Voitax ships, still reeling from the sudden appearance of the human fleet, scrambled to mount a defense, but it was too late. As the orbital bombardment continued, Admiral Garrett signaled the ground forces. "Captain Thompson, you have the green light. Give 'em hell, Marine." On the surface of the base, human dropships disgorged their cargo of power-armored Marines, led by Captain Mike Thompson. The Marines stormed the base, their advanced weapons spitting death as they engaged the Voitax in fierce close-quarters combat. Thompson ducked behind a shattered wall as a hail of Voitax fire whipped past his head. He glanced at his squad, their faces grim beneath their helmets. "Push forward! We've got 'em on the ropes!" The Marines surged ahead, their power armor absorbing the brunt of the Voitax fire. Thompson himself led the charge, his plasma rifle blazing as he cut down Voitax warriors left and right. The enemy soldiers, despite their larger size and strength, were no match for the speed and firepower of the human forces. Back in the council chambers, Nesso paced furiously, his claws clicking against the polished floor. He whirled to face Adams, his eyes blazing. "I demand answers, human! Where are your ships? What are you hiding?" Before Adams could respond, a chime sounded, announcing an incoming priority message. The counselors fell silent, their attention drawn to the main view screen. The image purposed to show the smoking ruins of the Voitax base, human ships hovering triumphantly overhead. Nesso's jaw dropped, his eyes widening in disbelief. "Impossible." Adams rose to his feet, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Counselors, I believe this should answer your questions about the fate of our fleet." As the counselors stared at the screen in stunned silence, Adams continued. "Our ships are equipped with advanced cloaking technology, derived from the same spatial distortion drives that allowed us to bypass the Voitax disruption fields. We use this technology to track the Voitax to their base and launch a surprise attack." Nesso slumped back in his seat, his earlier bravado evaporating. "But how?" Adams allowed himself a small, triumphant smile. "Counselors, you have gravely underestimated humanity, our technology, our grit, our strength. We are not the primitives you believed us to be." As the council grappled with this revelation, Admiral Garrett's fleet, still cloaked, set course for the next Voitax stronghold. The hunt was on, and humanity was determined to see this war through to the end. The galaxy held its breath, bracing for the next phase of the conflict, as the true power of humanity was finally unveiled. The council chamber erupted into chaos as news of the human victory spread. Counselors shouted over each other, demanding explanations and hurling accusations. Amidst the din, Nesso's voice cut through like a plasma beam. "Adams, my chambers now!" Robert followed the seething Zanari leader, his face a mask of calm. As the door slid shut behind them, Neso rounded on him. "You deceived us!" Neso snarled, smacking his fist on the desk. "Your primitive ships, your helpless act, it was all a lie." Robert stood his ground. "We deceived no one, Counselor. You saw what you wanted to see." "Impossible. No species could hide such technology." "Perhaps if you'd bothered to look beyond our primitive exterior, you'd have seen the truth," Robert shot back. "Your arrogance blinded you." Nesso's eyes narrowed. "You will regret this, human. Earth will face sanctions for this deception." As they argued, Admiral Garrett's fleet moved like ghosts through Wojtak's space. On the bridge of the Artemis, Garrett studied a holographic display of their latest target, a massive Wojtak shipyard. "All ships, prepare for synchronized strike," Garrett ordered. "Hit their power core first, then weapon systems." The cloaked human ships materialized around the shipyard. Before the Wojtaks could react, pinpoint-accurate fire from the human vessels tore through their defenses. The shipyard's superstructure buckled and collapsed, debris spinning off into the void. On a Wojtak's command ship, General Cax watched in horror as another installation went dark. "How?" he roared. "How are they doing this?" His subordinate trembled. We can't track them, sir. It's like fighting shadows." Meanwhile, on Earth, a nondescript shuttle docked at a research facility. Zoran, Master Zanari spy, stepped out, his features altered to pass as human. He smiled at the guard, flashing perfect credentials. Inside, Zoran's team worked quickly, placing undetectable taps on key systems. "Focus on the spatial distortion data," Zoran whispered. "Neso wants everything." In a bombed-out Wojtak's command post, Captain Thompson sifted through debris. His Marines stood guard, armor scorched from recent fighting. Thompson's eyes widened as he decrypted a data pad. "Sir," he called to his XO, "you need to see this. Looks like the Wojtaks had inside info on Council defenses." "A traitor?" the XO asked. Thompson nodded grimly. "Seems that way. I'm sending this to Earth now." In his quarters, Robert Adams pored over the data from Thompson. A chill ran down his spine as he connected the dots. The Zanari's vehement opposition, their desperate grab for human tech. It all pointed to one conclusion. Elsewhere, Neso paced his chambers. An encrypted comm chimed. "Report," he barked. Zoran's voice came through. "We have the data, sir, but the human security is tight. We need more time for the prototypes." Neso snarled. "We don't have time. Take whatever action necessary. We must have that tech." Days later, alarms blared across a human research station. Flames engulfed labs as personnel ran for escape pods. On the Artemis, Garrett received the news, his face contorted with rage. "Those Zanari bastards," he growled. "They've gone too far." In an emergency council session, Robert stood before the assembled aliens, datapad in hand. "Counselors, I have proof of Zanari espionage and sabotage against Earth." Neso leapt to his feet. "Lies! Where is your evidence?" Robert tapped his datapad, and damning recordings filled the air. Neso's face drained of color as his own voice echoed through the chamber. "The Zanari alone are fit to rule," Neso's recording declared. "Humanity and their tech must be controlled or destroyed." The council gasped. Security officers moved towards Neso, who backed away, eyes darting. "You fool," he spat. "You'll doom us all." As Neso was led away, Robert's comm unit buzzed urgently. His blood ran cold as he read the message. "Counselors," he announced, voice grave. "The Wojtaks have launched a major counteroffensive. They're using our own cloaking tech against us." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The galaxy stood on the brink, and humanity's greatest triumph had become a double-edged sword. The council chamber erupted into frantic activity as the gravity of the situation sank in. Counselors barked orders into comm units, scrambling to mobilize their remaining forces. Robert Adams stood at the center of the storm, his voice steady as he coordinated with alien leaders. "We need every ship you can spare," he urged. "The Voitax are hitting multiple systems simultaneously." On the bridge of the Artemis, Admiral Garrett's face was grim as reports flooded in. Cloaked Voitax ships materialized out of nowhere, their weapons tearing through unprepared defenses. "All ships, tighten formation," Garrett ordered. "They may have our tech, but they don't know how to use it like we do." The human fleet closed ranks, their sensors straining to detect the ghostly enemy vessels. Suddenly, a Voitax cruiser decloaked mere kilometers away, its guns blazing. "Evasive maneuvers," Garrett shouted. The Artemis banked hard, narrowly avoiding the incoming fire. Back on the council station, Adams pored over intelligence reports with alien analysts. A name kept popping up. Zoran. "This Zanari agent," Adams said, pointing to a blurry image. "He's the key. We find him. We cut off the Voitax's tech advantage." On a war-torn planet below, Captain Thompson and his Marines crouched behind the twisted wreckage of a downed shuttle. Voitax troops advanced, flickering in and out of view as their personal cloaking devices malfunctioned. "Sir, their cloaks are unstable in atmosphere," a Marine whispered. Thompson nodded. "Exploit it. Wait for the flicker, then strike." As a Voitax soldier shimmered into view, Thompson's team unleashed a coordinated volley. The alien fell, its armor no match for pinpoint human fire. In orbit, Admiral Garrett made a snap decision. "All ships close to point-blank range. Nullify their cloaking advantage." The human fleet surged forward, closing the distance to the enemy. At such close range, cloaking became irrelevant. Space lit up with furious exchanges of fire. "Fire spatial charges," Garrett commanded. The human ships unleashed their secret weapon. Spatial distortion warheads detonated among the Voitax fleet, tearing holes in the fabric of space-time. Enemy ships buckled and shattered, unable to withstand the onslaught. Meanwhile, in a hidden lab, Adams worked feverishly with council scientists. Holographic displays flickered as they analyzed the stolen cloaking tech. "There," Adams said, pointing to a data stream. "That's the key frequency. If we can disrupt it..." Hours later, a triumphant cheer went up. They had cracked the code. "Transmitting countermeasure now," Adams announced. Across the battlefield, Voitax ships suddenly flickered into view, their cloaks failing. Council forces pounced on the now visible targets. Admiral Garrett seized the momentum. "All ships converge on the Voitax command vessel. It's time to end this." The Artemis led the charge, its guns pounding the massive Voitax dreadnought. The enemy flagship returned fire, scoring hits that shook the human vessel to its core. As the space battle raged, a cloaked shuttle slipped away from the Voitax command ship. Inside, Zoran smirked, certain of his escape. Suddenly, the shuttle rocked as docking clamps latched onto its hull. Captain Thompson's voice crackled over the comm. "Knock, knock, you traitorous bastard." Marine boarders stormed the shuttle, overwhelming Zoran's guards. Thompson himself tackled the Zanari spy, slamming him to the deck. "It's over," Thompson growled, snapping restraints onto the struggling alien. With Zoran captured and the Voitax leadership in disarray, the tide of battle turned decisively. The Artemis's guns finally penetrated the enemy flagship's defenses, gutting the massive vessel. Across the battlefield, Voitax ships began to retreat or surrender. The coordinated offensive crumbled without its leadership and technological edge. In the aftermath, the council chamber was subdued as the full cost of the victory became clear. But as Robert Adams stood to address the assembled aliens, a new respect shone in their eyes. "Today, we have proven that together, we can overcome any threat," Adams declared. "Let this be the beginning of a new era of cooperation." The counselors nodded in agreement, but as the celebrations began, a shadow of doubt remained. Had they truly rooted out all the traitors in their midst? As the galaxy looked to rebuild, The council knew they could never again underestimate the human capacity for both ingenuity and treachery. The victory celebration was cut short as alarms blared across the council station. Robert Adams rushed to the command center, his heart pounding. On the main view screen, chaos unfolded. A heavily armored transport vessel, designed to carry high-value prisoners, drifted in space. Its hull was breached in multiple locations, venting atmosphere and debris. Surrounding it were the smoking wrecks of council escort ships. "Status report," Adams barked. A technician looked up from his console, face pale. "Sir, it's Nesso's transport. We've lost contact." Adams clenched his fists. "Show me the sensor logs." The screen flickered, displaying recorded footage. A squad of sleek black ships dropped out of warp, swarming the transport. Their weapons tore through the escorts with surgical precision. As Adams watched, a boarding shuttle attached itself to the transport's airlock. Minutes later, it detached and sped away, vanishing into warp with the attack force. "Zanari ships," Adams growled. "They extracted Neso." The council chamber erupted into pandemonium. Alien diplomats shouted accusations and demands. Adams raised his voice above the din. "We need answers from the Zanari government. Now." Hours later, Adams stood before a holographic projection of the Zanari High Council. Their features were impassive, giving nothing away. "This attack was an act of war," Adams said, his voice low and dangerous. "Explain yourselves." The lead counselor's antennae twitched. "We categorically deny any involvement in this unfortunate incident." "Unfortunate?" Adams spat. "Dozens of council guards are dead." "Perhaps," another counselor interjected, "this was the work of rogue elements within our military. Rest assured we will investigate thoroughly." As the connection terminated, Adams turned to his advisors. "They're lying through their teeth. But why?" On the bridge of the Artemis, Admiral Garrett received an encrypted transmission. His eyes widened as he read the contents. "Confirm this immediately," he ordered. Garrett's intelligence chief nodded grimly. "Already done, sir. It's genuine." The Admiral activated the ship's intercom. "All hands, battle stations. We may have a serious problem." In a secret bunker deep within Zanari space, Neso stood before a gathering of military officers. Their uniforms bore unfamiliar insignia, a clenched fist crushing a star. "Brothers," Neso proclaimed, "the time has come. We will purge the weakness from our empire and reclaim our destiny." The officers roared their approval. General Zykor stepped forward, his scarred face twisted in a savage grin. "The purists stand ready," Zykor growled. "Humanity and their lackeys will burn." Across Zanari space, loyalist military installations found themselves under sudden, devastating attack. Purist warships dropped out of warp, unleashing furious barrages. Ground forces swarmed defensive positions, overwhelmed by the ferocity of the assault. On a Zanari colony world, panicked civilians fled as Purist dropships screamed overhead. Tanks rolled through city streets, their guns reducing government buildings to rubble. The council watched in horror as reports flooded in. The Zanari Empire was tearing itself apart. "We have to intervene," one counselor insisted. Robert Adams shook his head. "If we send in troops now, we'll only inflame the situation. The purists will paint us as invaders." Admiral Garrett's hologram flickered to life. "With all due respect, sir, we can't sit idle. Our outposts in Zanari space are under attack. We need to strike back, hard and fast." Before Adams could respond, another transmission cut in. General Zykor's face filled the screen, his eyes blazing with fanatical intensity. "Attention, Council vermin," Zykor snarled. "You have 24 hours to withdraw all forces from Zanari space and sever all ties with the human scum. Refuse, and we will crush you." As if to punctuate his threat, the feed cut to footage of a council outpost. Purist warships swarmed it, reducing the station to floating debris. The council chamber fell silent. Adams's mind raced, weighing options and outcomes. "We need more information," he said at last. "I propose a covert operation. Infiltrate the Purist ranks, locate NATO, and assess their true capabilities. Captain Thompson stepped forward, his face set with unwavering willpower. "Sir, my team is ready. Just say the word." As the council debated, Admiral Garrett's fleet took up position along the Zanari border. Weapons charged, shields raised. They stood as a silent warning. The galaxy held its breath, teetering on the edge of all-out war. Captain Thompson crouched behind a twisted bulkhead, his pulse rifle at the ready. The acrid stench of ozone and burnt circuitry filled his nostrils. Around him, his elite Marine squad moved with practiced precision, their adaptive camouflage seamlessly blending with the metallic walls of the Zanari purist stronghold. "Zoran, status on the next checkpoint," Thompson whispered into his comms. The Zanari spy's voice crackled back. "2 guards, heavy armor, biometric scanners at the entrance. You'll need to move fast." Thompson signaled his team. They slipped down the corridor, every step calculated. As they approached the checkpoint, Private Rodriguez produced a small device. With a flick of his wrist, he sent it skittering across the floor. The device emitted a pulse, temporarily scrambling the purist's sensors. In that split second of confusion, Thompson's team struck. 2 silenced shots dropped the guards before they could raise an alarm. Corporal Chen quickly accessed the security terminal, his fingers flying over the alien interface. "We're in, Captain, but we've got limited time before the system resets." The squad pushed deeper into the facility. Each step brought them closer to the heart of the purist operation. They passed laboratories filled with strange, pulsating equipment. Holographic displays showed star charts with entire systems marked for cleansing. "My God," muttered Sergeant Willis as they examined a data terminal. "They're planning to hit every major non-Zanari world. Billions would die." Thompson's eyes hardened. "Keep moving. We need to find the weapon specs." As they entered a vast chamber, the Marines froze. Before them stood a massive device, its core glowing with an otherworldly energy. "That's it," Zoran's voice trembled. "The Doomsday weapon. It's further along than we thought." Suddenly, alarms blared. Red lights bathed the chamber as blast doors slammed shut. "We've been made," Thompson shouted. "Defensive positions now." The air filled with the whine of charging weapons as purist troops poured into the chamber. Plasma bolts sizzled past Thompson's head as he dove for cover. "Chen, get that data. Willis covering fire." The Marines fought with ruthless efficiency, their advanced weapons cutting through purist armor. But for every enemy that fell, 2 more took their place. Thompson keyed his emergency beacon. "Command, this is Fire Team Zulu. We've confirmed the weapon, requesting immediate extraction and strike package." Static filled the channel, then Robert Adams's voice cut through. "Copy Zulu. Hold position. Support is inbound." As the firefight intensified, Thompson made a snap decision. "Zoran, can you disable that weapon?" "Possibly, but I'd need direct access to the core." "All right, new plan. Willis, Rodriguez, you're with me. We're going to give Zoran a chance to shut this thing down. Chen, take Johnson and secure our exit. The rest of you, keep these bastards busy." Thompson's team fought their way across the chamber, each step a battle. They reached the weapons control panel, and Zoran's voice guided them through the alien systems. Just as they began the shutdown sequence, a familiar voice boomed across the chamber. "I think not, human filth." Thompson spun to see Nesso himself, flanked by heavily armed purist elites. The Zanari trader's eyes blazed with hatred. "You're too late," Nesso snarled. "The purification of the galaxy begins now." As Nesso reached for the weapon controls, Thompson's team opened fire. The chamber erupted into chaos as both sides clashed in a desperate struggle for control of the Doomsday device. Outside the purist stronghold, Admiral Garrett's fleet dropped out of warp, weapons primed. The final battle for the fate of the stars was about to begin. The battle raged outside the purist stronghold as Captain Thompson and his team fought their way deeper into the facility. Sweat dripped down Thompson's face as he pressed his back against a cold metal wall, pulse rifle clutched tightly to his chest. He glanced at his remaining squad members, their faces etched with exhaustion and tenacity. "This is it," Thompson whispered, nodding towards the massive blast doors ahead. NASO's command center. Ready? The Marines nodded silently. Thompson tapped a command into his wrist computer, triggering a series of small explosives they'd planted earlier. The blast doors groaned and buckled inward. As the smoke cleared, Thompson's team surged forward into the cavernous chamber beyond. Banks of alien computer terminals lined the walls, their screens flickering with incomprehensible data. At the center stood an imposing figure, Naso himself, flanked by a cadre of heavily armed purist guards. Naso's lips curled into a sneer. Ah, the human vermin, how predictable. Thompson leveled his rifle at the Zanari trader. It's over, Naso. Surrender now. Neso laughed, a harsh, grating sound. Foolish creature. You have no idea of the power we now wield. With a gesture, Neso activated a holographic display. A massive, pulsing orb of energy appeared, the doomsday weapon in all its terrifying glory. Behold, Neso proclaimed, the instrument of your species' extinction. With this, we will cleanse the galaxy of your taint. Before Thompson could respond, Neso barked an order. His guards opened fire, filling the air with sizzling bolts of plasma. The Marines dove for cover, returning fire with practiced precision. Private Chen's voice crackled over the comm. Captain, I've got a data port. Uploading weapon schematics to the fleet now. Thompson acknowledged as he popped up from behind a console, dropping 2 purist soldiers with well-placed shots. The firefight intensified, both sides trading volleys of deadly energy blasts. Suddenly, the entire facility shuddered. Admiral Garrett's voice boomed through Thompson's comm. All units, this is Garrett. Commencing full assault on the purist stronghold. Fire Team Zulu, status on the weapon. Still active, sir, Thompson shouted over the din of battle. We're working on it. As if in response, alarms began blaring throughout the command center. Naso's eyes widened in panic as he furiously worked the weapon's controls. No, the Zanari trader snarled. You will not deny us our destiny. Thompson realized with horror what was happening. He's activating it early. Everyone out now. The Marines began falling back, but Thompson knew there wasn't time. The weapon's core was already destabilizing, energy arcing wildly across its surface. Go, Thompson ordered his team. I'll shut it down. Ignoring their protests, Thompson charged towards Neso. The Zanari met him halfway, cybernetically enhanced muscles rippling as he swung a vicious blow. Thompson ducked under it, driving his fist into Neso's midsection. The two grappled furiously as the facility crumbled around them. Thompson felt ribs crack under Neso's inhuman strength, but he pushed through the pain. His combat training took over, identifying weak points in the Zanari's stance. With a desperate surge of adrenaline, Thompson swept Neso's legs out from under him. As the alien crashed to the ground, Thompson scrambled for the weapon controls. Warnings flashed across the alien interface as Thompson's fingers flew over the buttons. He input the shutdown sequence Zoran had taught him, praying it would work. The weapon's pulsing glow began to fade. Thompson allowed himself a moment of relief before the realization hit him. The facility was coming apart. Chunks of ceiling crashed down around him as he searched frantically for an escape route. There was none. Thompson closed his eyes, accepting his fate. As the world collapsed into darkness, his last thought was of the billions of lives he'd saved. In the space above, Admiral Garrett watched grimly as the purist stronghold imploded. The fleet's sensors registered the weapon's deactivation moments before the facility's destruction. Status report, Garrett demanded. His tactical officer's voice was heavy. Sir, no life signs detected in the target area. Captain Thompson and his team, they're gone. Garrett bowed his head, allowing himself a moment of grief for the fallen hero. Then, squaring his shoulders, he opened a channel to the Allied fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Garrett. The doomsday weapon has been neutralized. Commence mop-up operations against remaining purist forces. As the battered fleet moved to secure their hard-won victory, Garrett couldn't help but wonder at the cost. The purists were defeated, but the road ahead would be hard. Admiral Garrett stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, his eyes fixed on the holographic display of the galaxy. Red markers pulsed across the map, each representing a confirmed purist sighting or skirmish. He zoomed in on a cluster near the outer rim, where intelligence suggested Nesso's fleet had last been spotted. "Status report!" Garrett barked, his voice tight with tension. Lieutenant Commander Chen stepped forward, datapad in hand. "Sir, we've detected unusual energy signatures in the Typhon expanse, consistent with Zanari warp drives, but different, more advanced." Garrett's eyes narrowed. "Voitax tech?" Chen nodded grimly. "It's possible, sir. The readings match what we know of their propulsion systems." The Admiral turned to the Zanari defector standing nearby. "Zoran, your thoughts?" The alien's compound eyes flickered as he studied the data. "This region, it's perfect for a hidden base. Volatile nebulae, gravitational anomalies. It would mask their presence from standard scans." Garrett activated the ship-wide comm. "All hands, battle stations. We may have found our quarry." As klaxons blared throughout the vessel, Garrett's mind raced. The loss of Thompson and his team still stung, a constant reminder of the price of failure. He wouldn't let their sacrifice be in vain. Across the galaxy, on a desolate moon orbiting a gas giant, Major Alexis Knight crouched behind a twisted outcropping of rock. Her team of Allied Special Forces operatives lay scattered around her, their adaptive camouflage blending seamlessly with the barren landscape. Through her high-powered scope, Knight observed the purist outpost below. Zanari guards patrolled the perimeter, their cybernetic enhancements glinting in the dim starlight. "Eagle's Nest, this is Groundhog," Knight whispered into her comm. "We have eyes on the target, initiating infiltration." With a series of hand signals, she directed her team forward. They moved like ghosts across the lunar surface, their footsteps silent in the thin atmosphere. As they approached the outpost's energy barrier, Private Rodriguez produced a small device. He pressed it against the shimmering field, and for a brief moment, a hole appeared. The team slipped through, undetected. Inside, Knight led her squad through a maze of corridors. The walls pulsed with an eerie bioluminescence, a hallmark of Zanari architecture. They passed labs filled with strange equipment, a fusion of purist and Voitax technology. "My God," Sergeant Willis breathed, peering into one of the chambers. "They're really trying to rebuild it." Knight's mind focused. "Keep moving. We need to find the main data hub." As they rounded a corner, Knight froze. Two Zanari scientists stood before them, their eyes widening in shock. Before the aliens could raise an alarm, Knight's team struck. Stun bolts dropped the Zanari silently. "Drag them out of sight," Knight ordered, "and hurry. Our window's closing." They found the data hub at the heart of the facility. As Willis stood guard, Rodriguez began hacking into the alien systems. Knight's eyes darted between the displays, searching for any clue to Nesso's whereabouts. Suddenly, an alarm blared. Knight cursed under her breath. "We've been made! Rodriguez, grab what you can. We're leaving." The team fought their way back through the facility, exchanging fire with purist security forces. As they reached the exit, Knight activated her emergency beacon. "Eagle's Nest, Groundhog, we need immediate evac." As if in answer, the night sky erupted with weapons fire. The Retribution and its support ships dropped out of warp, engaging the purist defense platforms in orbit. Knight and her team sprinted across the lunar surface, dodging energy blasts from pursuing Zanari troops. A shuttle swooped low, its bay doors opening. The Allied operatives leapt aboard, narrowly escaping as the shuttle rocketed back towards the Retribution. In the vessel's war room, Admiral Garrett studied the data Knight's team had retrieved. His face was grim as he addressed the assembled officers. "We've confirmed it," he said. "Nesso and his Voitax allies are rebuilding the weapon, but they're not just recreating it, they're improving it. If they succeed, no force in the galaxy will be able to stop them." He turned to the star chart, highlighting a distant system. "We've pinpointed their main research facility. It's heavily defended, a fortress in space. But we have no choice. We hit them now with everything we've got. Garrett's eyes blazed with fierce intensity. This ends here. For Thompson, for every life lost to Naso's madness, we will not fail. As the Retribution and its allied fleet prepared for the final confrontation, the fate of the stars hung in the balance. The coming battle would determine whether the stars themselves would burn in the fires of Zanari hatred, or if a new era of peace could dawn for all species. Admiral Garrett stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The remote outpost loomed before them, a fortress of Zanari and Voitax technology nestled among jagged mountain peaks. "All ships, this is Admiral Garrett. Commence Operation Endgame," he ordered, his voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. The space around the outpost erupted in blinding flashes as Retribution's capital ships unleashed their firepower. Precision-guided energy beams lanced through the void, slamming into the outpost's defensive emplacements with devastating effect. On the bridge, Zoran monitored the assault's progress. "Admiral, their primary shield generators are failing. We've opened a gap in their defenses." Garrett nodded grimly. "Major Knight, you have a go. Good hunting." In the Retribution's hangar bay, Major Alexis Knight and her strike team boarded their dropships. The bay doors yawned open, revealing the fiery carnage below. Knight's voice crackled over the team's comms. "This is it, people. We hit hard, we hit fast. Failure is not an option." The dropships screamed through the atmosphere, dodging sporadic fire from the outpost's remaining defenses. They touched down amidst the smoking ruins of the outer perimeter, ramps slamming to the ground before the engines had fully spooled down. Knight was the first out, her pulse rifle at the ready. The acrid stench of burning metal and ozone filled her nostrils as she scanned for threats. A group of Zanari defenders rounded a corner, their cybernetic enhancements glinting in the harsh light. "Contact front!" Knight shouted, dropping to one knee and opening fire. The air filled with the sizzle of energy weapons as Knight's team engaged the enemy. Sergeant Willis unleashed a barrage from his heavy repeater, forcing the Zanari to scatter. Private Chen flanked left, tossing a plasma grenade that detonated in a blinding flash, leaving nothing but smoldering cybernetic parts. As Knight's forces pushed forward, the skies above erupted in chaos. Retribution's fighter squadrons clashed with swarms of Voitax interceptors. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers, as ships on both sides were reduced to superheated debris. Inside the research complex, alarms blared as Naso and his Voitax allies scrambled to salvage their plans. The Zanari leader's eyes darted frantically between holographic displays. "Accelerate the activation sequence," he barked at a Voitax scientist. "We cannot let them stop us now." The massive doomsday device hummed ominously, arcs of energy crackling across its surface as power levels climbed to dangerous levels. Knight's team fought their way through the maze-like interior, dispatching pockets of resistance with ruthless efficiency. They reached the central chamber just as Naso initiated the final activation sequence. "Shut it down," Knight ordered, her voice nearly drowned out by the device's deafening roar. Lieutenant Ramirez charged forward, firing his disruptor at the main control panel. The blast temporarily interrupted the activation, but at a terrible cost. Feedback from the unstable device engulfed Ramirez in a storm of energy, leaving nothing behind. "Ramirez!" Chen cried out, but Knight pulled him back. "Don't let his sacrifice be in vain," she said, her voice hard. "Take out those guards." As her team engaged Niso's personal guard in a furious firefight, Knight herself sprinted towards the Zanari leader. Niso turned to face her, his cybernetic limbs whirring as he assumed a combat stance. Knight ducked under Niso's first swing, feeling the air displacement as his fist passed inches from her head. She countered with a flurry of strikes, targeting weak points in the Zanari's enhanced physiology. Niso staggered back, caught off guard by the human's speed and precision. With a primal yell, Knight launched herself forward, driving her armored knee into Niso's midsection. The Zanari's eyes bulged as the air was driven from his lungs. Knight followed up with a vicious elbow strike to the base of Niso's skull, sending him crashing to the ground. Chen, Willis, secure that console, Knight ordered as she planted her boot on Nesso's back. Her team rushed to the Doomsday device's controls, frantically working to shut down the activation sequence. The chamber shook violently, panels exploding in showers of sparks as the weapon's power levels spiraled out of control. Come on, Chen muttered, his fingers flying over the alien interface. With seconds to spare, the device's ominous hum began to subside. The oppressive energy filling the room dissipated, leaving behind only the acrid smell of ozone and burnt circuitry. Knight allowed herself a moment of relief before activating her comm. Admiral Garrett, this is Knight. The package is secure. Nesso is in custody. Outside, the sounds of battle faded as Retribution's forces mopped up the last pockets of resistance. As Knight marched the defeated Nesso out of the complex, she saw Admiral Garrett himself waiting, flanked by a squad of Marines. The Admiral's eyes were hard as he regarded the Zanari traitor. Nesso, by the authority of the Galactic Council, you are under arrest for crimes against sentient life. As Nesso was led away in restraints, Garrett turned to Knight. Well done, Major. The galaxy owes you and your team a debt it can never repay. Knight nodded, the weight of their narrow victory and the loss of Ramirez heavy on her shoulders. As the sun began to rise over the war-torn landscape, she knew that while this battle was won, the war for the galaxy's future was a long way to go. The UES Retribution emerged from warp space, its hull scarred and blackened from the brutal campaign against Nesso and his rogue Voitax allies. As the massive vessel approached Earth, a swarm of escort ships surrounded it, their running lights blinking in celebratory patterns. Admiral Garrett stood on the bridge, his weathered face illuminated by the soft glow of holographic displays. He watched as Earth grew larger in the view screen, its blue-green surface a welcome sight after months of grueling combat. Sir, Lieutenant Chen called out, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. Garrett nodded, and Robert Adams' face appeared on the main screen. The Alliance leader's eyes crinkled with pride as he addressed the Admiral. Welcome home, Admiral. The Council and I eagerly await your return. Your victory over Nesso has secured peace for our galaxy. As the Retribution docked at Earth's orbital station, Garrett and his senior staff were greeted by thunderous applause. Crowds of civilians and military personnel lined the corridors, cheering and reaching out to shake hands with the returning heroes. In the Grand Assembly Hall, Robert Adams stood before the gathered dignitaries, his voice booming through the chamber. Today, we honor the brave men and women who risked everything to thwart the resurgence of the Zanari purist threat. Their courage and sacrifice have ensured a future of peace and cooperation for all species. Garrett stepped forward to receive a medal, the weight of it hanging heavy on his chest. As he turned to address the crowd, alarms blared throughout the station. The celebratory atmosphere evaporated instantly. Sir, Chen shouted, rushing towards Garrett with a data pad. We're receiving urgent reports from the outer systems. It's the Voitax. They're back, and in numbers we've never seen before. Garrett's blood ran cold as he studied the incoming data. Grainy footage showed massive Voitax warships emerging from the depths of unexplored space, their sleek hulls dripping with strange, pulsating weaponry. In the war room, Garrett and his staff watched in horror as world after world fell to the Voitax onslaught. The enemy's new weapons tore holes in the fabric of space-time itself, reducing entire planets to lifeless husks in seconds. How is this possible? Major Knight demanded, her fists clenched at her sides. We destroyed their doomsday weapon. Where did they get this kind of firepower? Robert Adams entered the room, his face ashen. Admiral, I'm authorizing the deployment of Project Kronos. It's our only hope. Garrett's eyes widened. The temporal displacement array. But sir, it's never been tested in combat. The risks are necessary, Adams cut him off. We're out of options, Admiral. Earth itself will fall if we don't act now. In the following hours, Garrett's remaining ships were hastily retrofitted with the experimental temporal displacement arrays. Crew members worked frantically to install the devices, their hands shaking as they connected delicate components. On the bridge of the Retribution, Garrett addressed his fleet. This is Admiral Garrett. We face an enemy unlike any we've encountered before. The fate of our galaxy rests on your shoulders. May whatever gods you believe in watch over us all. The human fleet jumped to warp, racing towards the heart of the Voitax Armada. As they dropped out of faster-than-light travel, the full might of the enemy force filled their view screens. All ships activate temporal arrays, Garrett ordered. The space around them erupted in a kaleidoscope of impossible colors as reality itself began to warp and twist. Voitax ships vanished in flashes of light, only to reappear seconds later, their hulls twisted and broken. Garrett watched in awe as entire enemy battle groups blinked out of existence, trapped in loops of fractured time. But the victory was short-lived. Uncontrolled temporal vortices began to form, threatening to consume everything in their path. "Admiral!" Chen shouted over the din of alarms. "Our own ships are being affected. We can't control the—" His words were cut short as a massive rift opened directly in front of the Retribution. Garrett felt the deck lurch beneath his feet as the gravitational forces began to tear the ship apart. "All hands, abandon ship!" Garrett roared into the comm system. He watched as escape pods jettisoned from the dying vessel, carrying his crew to safety. As the bridge disintegrated around him, Garrett's final thoughts were of the countless lives he'd sworn to protect. The rift engulfed him, and in a blinding flash of light, Admiral Garrett and the Retribution vanished from the universe. The remaining human ships, witnessing their leader's sacrifice, rallied for one final push. They unleashed a synchronized barrage of temporal displacement waves, engulfing the Voitax Armada in a cascading disruption of space-time. As the last enemy ship winked out of existence, an eerie silence fell over the battlefield. The human crews stared at their sensors in disbelief, unsure if they had achieved victory or merely postponed their doom. Back on Earth, Robert Adams stood in the silent war room, surrounded by holographic displays, showing the aftermath of the cataclysmic battle. The images of devastated worlds and tears in the very fabric of space haunted him. A junior officer approached, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sir, we're detecting anomalies, regions of space where our sensors can't penetrate. The temporal displacement technology, it's changed things in ways we don't understand." Adams nodded grimly, his eyes fixed on the starfield before him. As reports of the battle's outcome spread throughout the Alliance, a palpable unease settled over the surviving populations. They had won, but at what cost? And what new horrors might they have unleashed upon the universe?
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.